Thank you for watching Future TV. And tonight we do have a special guest in the house. Today we do have a governor for candidate, and his name is George Carrillo. We are so happy to have George Carrillo in the house tonight. I know we're going to have a lot of things to share with George tonight. Thank you for coming to the studio, Mr. George.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, we are here in Future TV, and Future TV is a non-profit organization that we're trying to empower our community with the message in the language that they can understand, and they can have like all the information that they need to understand. And we are so happy to have you here tonight. And probably if you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself, and probably elaborate also about why being a governor, Oregon governor.
Yeah, sure. So again, my name is George Carrillo. I am running for governor of Oregon. I come from the Latino culture. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, and my parents are from Quito, Ecuador. You know, coming into this country was quite difficult for my parents. They didn't have very much. They were factory workers for the majority of their life, and they saw firsthand what struggles of being an immigrant in this country really looks like. And they tried to provide us every opportunity so that way we can exceed in this country. The reality is though, for as much and as hard as they, tried to help us, my journey to where I've gotten here in my life has been very difficult. It's been one where I've been able to serve my local community, not just as a police officer, but overseas as a United States Marine, and now here for the state of Oregon as an executive working for the Oregon Health Authority.
Okay.
But besides all of that, I'm a husband. I have two wonderful kids. I have two boys, a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old that are at home right now, probably listening to Daddy right now.
Good.
And everything I do, and the reason why I'm running for governor is, I really want a better life for my children. The reality is that the scars that I live with being a person of color walking through this country, all of those things have already happened for me. I want to prevent that from forever happening to my children, and that they have a better opportunity and a different path, that they have an equitable opportunity to be successful in life.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Is that the reason what got you into governor, or is there more reasons you want to be a governor and you're avoiding, or you're trying to be a governor?
So what is interesting is that in my position with the Oregon Health Authority and also with the Oregon Department of Human Services, I've worked there also as a program manager, is that the higher that I go up in government agency, the clearer the picture is on why we continue to struggle to help out our community members. And it's just not a matter of whether it's the black community, the Latino community, the Asian community, or the white community. It really is that we have leaders and in power, whether it's from the governor's office, our executive branch, between all of the different departments, whether it's in our legislature, we don't have people that understand what equity is. We try to solve people's problems from a position of power and privilege. And when we don't understand how to do that, we spend billions of dollars on things that do not work.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we celebrate our successes by saying, look at what we've done. The government doesn't do anything. It's the people that do the work.
Yeah.
Right.
It's the people that we should be celebrating. It's the people that we should be supporting.
Exactly.
All right.
But our politics, unfortunately, is what dominates this corruption with power, greed, and money.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. And as we talk about the government is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, and what will be your number one priority as a governor, and what step will you take to achieve it?
So I think as the government, we need to be able to lead by example. So a big part of my campaign is talking about government reform.
Right.
Our government does not treat minorities well within its state services. The reality is that a lot of workers within our system, they are marginalized, they are discriminated against. Our current government, I can confidently say, is still based off of a racist organization that has system inequities built into it that does not allow it to lead in the way that the people need for us to lead. By doing that, I think is transforming our human resources department, changing that to be more of a separation of power from control of the governor, to be able to be on its own in order to protect what's in the best interest of Oregonians. I think we need the right executive management team in place. Our government should look like the people that it serves, and currently it does not. Outside of that government reform, there's other things as far as reform in our education system, in our criminal justice, and also in our health care. Those are the four major pillars that I want to change, that the governor can change. And when I'm elected governor, those things will happen immediately.
Yeah, so hopefully you get elected. And I heard you talked about example. Which example should we follow? The state's example or our people example?
So when I think about being able to treat people fairly and with basic human rights, we as a community, we also struggle too to understand, how do we marginalize people? How do we discriminate against people? I believe that we need to bring in the right people to be able to lead by example, so that way we can be the model of saying, this is how we're supposed to work with community, because the people within our government, they represent our community. They represent the best in our community, and that together between community and government, we can have an alliance to say, this is what's culturally appropriate for how we are supposed to behave in society together.
What are the three main focus that you have, and what would it be, the three main focus that you would have as if you get elected?
So I think the first one is we really need to work on our education system. Our education system right now is currently broken. Our class sizes are incredibly too large. The school is not built for teachers to actually educate our children. They are there to basically manage a chaotic situation. And when we think of our kids, whether they're black or brown, there's a disproportionality of our children that aren't being successful outside of school. There is a school to prison pipeline that we are seeing overrepresentation of kids of color going to the Oregon Youth Authority, going into the state prison system. The reality is that our school system right now is set up for children to fail before they're going to get any sort of help.
Right.
And so a child has to fail between 3 to 4 years before they're actually going to get tested for any sort of learning disability. That is very traumatic for a child to consistently have to fail in order to receive any sort of help.
Right.
But then when we think of our children of color, they are then seen, they're even more marginalized in that system because they get frustrated. They're frustrated at failing, and so what do? We penalize them. The system is not set up for children to succeed, and it's even worse if you're a person of color.
Right.
And so when we look at that and we say, this is what's interesting, and hopefully your listeners understand this, is that for many of us, we speak different languages at home.
Correct.
And our children are not being tested because our families speak another language at home. Their theory is, we're not going to test the child for a learning disability because the family speaks another language at home. So they don't test them. They continue to push them through the system in order for them to be able to graduate, not understanding that they have a disability. And so what happens? Again, our kids go into the criminal justice system. It's not a very fair and equitable approach. Why isn't that we do not have our school system set up as a social service center where you have specialists there at the school being able to provide behavioral health counseling, right? Being able to have social services there at the building, so that way families are being fed.
Right.
That way that's a small example of being teachers being allowed to actually teach our children, making school sizes smaller, bringing in specialists that are actually trained specialists to teach our children that have learning disabilities. 1 in 5 children have dyslexia. 1 in 5 children. And a child that has dyslexia, they have to function at the same capacity as a master chess player. They're exhausted at the end of the day, but yet they have no help in our school system to help them through that. And I want everybody to understand too is that the Oregon Youth Authority, where our children, where we say our troubled children must go to, 75% of them cannot read.
Yeah.
75%. And the majority are black and brown children.
Right.
Our system is leaving our children behind. And I think that's absolutely unacceptable. As governor, I would make it the highest priority to fix our system, because that is, we can no longer accept the failures of our government by leaving our children behind.
Right. Thank you so much. And since we are talking about education, let me ask you this question. How do you ensure that our Oregon students get first class education? They have like proper education and everything. And also, how are we going to do that if we need like funding? How are you going to do that?
Yeah. Sorry. And while you're at it, when you said about schools, which category is it? Elementary, high school? Is it secondary, college? Which category?
So when we think about our children, when we, early learning, right, is very critical. So children coming into an education should be tested phonetically to understand whether or not they have a learning disability early on. But for children that are coming from out of state or coming from a different country, whether they've immigrated here or they're a refugee here, there should be those opportunities the moment that they've entered in school that they have the accessibility to be tested, so that way we can identify any sort of learning disability. Now, when we think about funding, I will tell you that I'm one of those Democrats that I do not believe in raising taxes, because this is my personal opinion. My personal opinion is that as a government, we fail to use taxpayer money appropriately. I believe that there is a better way of streamlining what we currently use. We currently fund organizations that do not do a good job and do not provide the goods and services that Oregonians need. Yeah. But what happens is that our funding and what we use for our tax dollars is what we use in order to retain power. So we have politicians, career politicians, using these funds as promises for more votes and more money, because that's what wins an election, is the illusion of power. So we have enough money to fix our education system. We have enough money to hire more teachers. We have enough money to be able to provide these services that our children need.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I understand that your goal is a better education. But also my point is still there, like, if you come from funding, and where are you going to get the money to pay for those funding? Because you need a better education, and that's going to need that's going to need money. So how are you going to pay for that?
Right. And currently what we currently have, looking at what we are investing in, and if it's not working, then why are we continuing to fund and give contracts to other organizations that do not need that money, that are not actually producing the outcomes? When we think about where we also can save money too, look at our prison system. Our prison system, we are pumping it with millions of dollars. It takes over $45,000 a year per inmate, right? And the majority, think about this, 255%. Black males is what is represented in our state system compared to our white counterpart. 115% over the white counterpart for the Latino population, right? We spend so much money funding our prison system that is completely broken and marginalizing people of color in this state. I think we can afford to take away money from our prison system instead of housing people that have drug abuse, drug addiction, or mental health disorders, and be able to take that money, help them, help out our education system, reinvest money in the appropriate way that actually makes sense, and not take that money so that way we can retain power and greed in our system. But it's not about needing more money. It's about making the right investments in our education system.
Right.
Right. And since you're talking about prison, because the statistics shows like a lot of people in prison are people of color. So, and once you get elected, how are you going to solve that? How are you going to change that system that we can just like fill the prison with people of color?
Yeah.
Immediately what I'll have is I will have the council provide me with recommendations on people that are being incarcerated because of a drug addiction, because of drug offenses, and also because of behavioral health challenges. What I will do is I will then pardon those people that the council comes to me with. The reality is that our system, our society, is not very forgiving. You know, you commit an offense and you go to prison, and you would think you would get a fresh start when you come out, but
Yeah.
you don't, right? You now have a criminal record. It's incredibly difficult to find a job.
Right.
It's difficult then to get an education and further yourself.
Yeah.
Housing is very difficult.
Right.
And all because of you had a drug addiction or because you had a behavioral health disorder that was not properly attended to.
Yeah.
We should not continue to penalize our community, especially our community of color is very disproportionate when it comes to the amount of time that we send people to prison. It's time to bring our people home, right?
Yeah.
And as governor, not only will I bring them home, but I will pardon them so that way their records can be clean, and that way they can actually get the services that they need to rehabilitate. Because the reality is that prison is not set up to help people succeed. Prison is a place where it's another corrupt organization where you go to get a PhD on how to become a better criminal,
Right.
right? And that's not effective, right? And so we're using all this money to continue to invest in a system that does not work. 60% of people that come out of prison come back in, but due to a drug offense. Again, we are dealing with our substance abuse disorder and our behavioral health disorder by putting them in prison and keeping them away from their families and their loved ones and giving them an opportunity to succeed. We're investing in the wrong system.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the housing, because right now, if you see Oregon, we do have like a lot of homeless, and also we do have traffic right now. Oregon is busy right now, and the cost of living is going high right now, as you can tell. People cannot afford housing anymore. So how are you going to change that to see if people can still survive in Oregon?
You know, the housing problem that we have right now is that inflation is incredibly high year over year.
Yeah.
And employers and even the state itself cannot keep up with inflation. Giving someone a 2% raise is nothing. Portland says that they have rent control, that a landlord can't increase rent more than 9%. That, to me, that's not rent control. 9%, I think, is it's not fair. It's not equitable, especially when you think about most employers can only afford about 1 to 2.5% increase in pay, but yet we have landlords and we have big private companies charging a rent increase of over 9%. And then when you think about housing, right? Housing is even more difficult. Even though sometimes housing is cheaper than actually renting, good luck trying to qualify, because how do you save enough money to get 20% down in order to be able to buy a house,
Yeah.
right? And so when we think about our low-income community, it is darn near impossible. When we think about our houseless community, the people that right now are living on the streets right now, I just passed a bunch of homeless tents as I was coming here.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no transitional services to get them off the street. All we are doing is saying, get away from here. We don't want to see you here, right? But we don't have real solutions to solve our problems. When I think about the opportunity for housing, especially for our low income, is that we should be able to pass and work with our community and work with our landlords to say, look, for a low income housing, you cannot charge them more than 30% of their total income. That is rent control. If a family can, there's no way that a family right now, when we think about a family of four, being able to afford rent at $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 for what, a 900 square foot apartment?
Right.
Who can afford that right now?
And how much did we get paid?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we don't make enough to even cover that rent. And even if we did, it is consuming the majority of our income.
Right.
So rent control, I believe, means that a landlord cannot charge you more than 30% of what you make. That leaves 70% available for people to be able to save, be able to afford to put clothes on their backs, be able to get to work, fill up their tanks, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
right now, gas is
High.
over $5 going into $6.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have so many things that are going on right now, but yet there's so many people that are getting rich off of the poor.
Yeah.
As it always been.
As it's always been. As it's always been.
Yeah.
But guess what? We're the ones that are not seen. We're the ones that are not represented. And yet we're the ones that are always being asked to be patient.
All right. Thank you so much. And also, let's talk about the minority and let's talk about the African community,
Yes.
especially. As African community, I don't know if you have been we have been like some of the African community. So as African community, what do you think is gonna help African community that they come here, they don't know the language, they don't know anything, and accidentally they make mistake and they got sent to prison, to jail, because they don't understand the system.
Yeah.
So how are you gonna help those African community?
Yeah,
Let's say
immigrations,
immigrants.
yeah.
Immigrants community, especially coming from Africa.
So I think when we think about our system, our criminal justice system, and this is for all people, whether you come from Africa, you come from another country, or from people that are just born here in the United States.
Yeah.
Our criminal justice system is not set up to have proper representation. When you think about a low income family, and they make a mistake because they don't understand what the laws are on this land,
Exactly.
the state will come in, the government will come in and provide a defense attorney that's paid at a very low rate. And they come in, and what do they want to do, right? They want to get you in and out. It's just like a McDonald's.
Yeah.
In and out, right? Let's do a plea bargain really quick, And instead of getting 5 years in prison, I got you 2 years in prison. It's a great deal, right? That's all they're trying to do.
Right. Yeah.
And the prosecutor, what are they trying to do? Well, they're doing the same thing. They don't try every single case. They only try about 5% of all of the crime that happens, right? The rest of the 95% is plea bargained.
Right.
The system isn't set up to be equitable. They have the power of the government to say, look, you're going to get 5 years, or you take this plea bargain and you get 2 years. What do you want? You want to be away from your family 2 years or 5 years? Those are your only options, right? And that's what they want. But the reason that they get away with it is that prosecutors have absolute immunity, which means as they're doing their job, they have immunity from any sort of conviction.
Right.
I'm sure you've seen this before, where the government has gotten it wrong and they've sent someone to prison, but yet we have DNA evidence that shows that they did not commit the crime. But yet the state refuses to let them out.
Yeah.
They try to find any other thing because it's all about appearance. They don't want to assume that responsibility to say that they got it wrong. And even though that they were corrupt in their practices, they have immunity. That immunity needs to be re-looked at.
Right.
We as a state need to say, you know what, if the state is going to invest this, whatever it is, let's say it's $1,000 for this case, then guess what? We should afford that defense attorney for a low-income family, for a low-income individual, the same amount of resources. If we want to talk about a fair system, then keep the money the same.
Right.
Whatever we invest also in the defense. Because what we are trying to figure out is what are the facts and who needs to actually be punished.
Yeah.
Not what's the easiest thing to do, which is to say, I'm going to give you 2 years. You should be thanking me for that.
Right. Even though you're not guilty, but they're going to give you a deal.
Yeah.
Because they don't care whether you're guilty or not. They only care about their conviction rate.
Yeah, thank you so much. We can't finish over here without talking about health a little bit, and especially let's talk about the COVID-19.
Yes.
Would you like to say for those people who doesn't want to get vaccinated, they try to avoid to get vaccinated, they don't believe in vaccine, I mean.
So, the vaccine has been incredibly politicized. The COVID-19 is a world health problem. It's going to take all of us to work together, and what we cannot do is alienate each other in that process. I truly do believe that it should be an individual's choice whether or not they want to be vaccinated. But there are things that we can do to help with the spread of COVID-19. I think that wearing masks, not forever, like right now the mask mandate was lifted, right? Because the science shows that we have enough vaccination, enough people that have gotten sick now that we have natural immunity, herd immunity that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I hope that's true. But as governor, the thing that as governor I have to take into consideration is the health and welfare of everybody, including our hospital system.
Right.
The problem with the vaccine and the way we rolled out the vaccine is that it became politicized. We did not come out to communities of color, provide them with a level of education of what does this mean to get the vaccine? What are some of the pros and cons? But we can't. What credibility does the government have coming into any of our communities? We have consistently lied to our communities of color. We've consistently pinned communities against each other. And so what we have seen in this state when it comes to the inequities, because it's very clear and apparent from the data that communities of color have received worse outcomes with COVID-19 than anybody else.
Right.
The data supports it. People do not trust the government. And there's a reason for it. It's because we continue to marginalize. It's because we continue to oppress our own people.
Yeah.
And so what I will say with COVID-19 in closing is that I do not believe that COVID-19 is over. But what I do promise as governor is that my highest priority will be to keep people safe. I will not do it at the expense of continuing to marginalize people and making it political, that I will give people the opportunity to be safe, and that I will make the tough decisions and take responsibility for those decisions.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering the questions. As you move on to governor and being elected as governor, can you name 2 things that you believe the state should change or you would change as you become a governor?
So 2 things that I would change. One, I would want proper representation within our government. The communities that we serve and the services that are needed need to have more leaders in place that actually represent the community that we are serving. The second thing is that we really need to look at what we are investing our money in. That this corruption that we have within our government stops, and that we actually use the money that taxpayers are providing us, and to understand that we are not the owners. We're not the bosses. Guess what? The boss is all of Oregon, the Oregonians, and that we show Oregon that we are being fiscally responsible with the taxes that are being provided to us and providing people with an equitable opportunity to be able to gain those funds. We need to get this money to the community quickly and efficiently. Right now, we are too slow, and we also dilute the money. So that way, we dilute the money, which produces a less impact on our community. Those are the two things that I would stop immediately, because those are the things that are actually going to make a change in our system.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching Future TV. Today we had a special guest in the house, and thank you for responding to our question.
Yeah.
And also, it was an honor and privilege to have you in the house tonight. Thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.